Morning. All right, we're all up there. Well, I think as many of you know, I am the Dean of Missions here at Sunset, but I also have another hat that I get to wear sometimes, or a lot of the time, and that's the hat of the Mission Coordinator for the Sunset Church of Christ. And so what I want to do this morning is talk to you a little bit about both of those roles, where they come together, where they are separate, and I want to look at how Sunset Church and the School of Missions both look at missions, and as they endeavor to carry out missions, they look at two areas, that of mission care and missionary care. And I want to talk a little bit about how those kind of come together. And then I want to share with you who our missionaries are that the Sunset Church of Christ supports, and talk to you a little bit about what's going to happen this coming Sunday, which is Sunset Mission Sunday. The Dean of Missions, I get to lead the School of Missions. We usually meet between August and December every year, though sometimes, depending upon the missionaries who want to go through and kind of what their timeline is, we may meet at a different time. But we're striving basically to prepare our missionaries to go with their heart's desire to reach the lost in a specific place. And so we'll begin to look at these two areas, that of mission care and missionary care. In the area of mission care, what we're doing is we're looking to see, okay, what is God's mission? What is it as He defines it? Because it comes from His heart, and it's His mandate as the sovereign King of the universe. And He knows better than anybody else how to love His creation and what they need. And so the mission of God has got to be clear in our minds, because that's never changing, right? That's from Him to us, and we want to hold on to that in its purest form, because everywhere, every time, and every place, what people need is the gospel. Whatever you see or think they may need, or whatever struggle they're facing, first and foremost, that's their primary basic need. But while we're carrying out the mission of God, there's a whole lot of variety in how we do that. So we look and go, okay, what does the Bible say, and how does it define the mission of God? But then, what is our vision? And vision is something that comes from us as God's people. And it comes out of who we are. And it comes out of our heart for the lost, that is matching His heart for the lost. But it comes out of who we are and where we are, and it has something to do with the people we hope to reach. And so it can look like many things in many different places. But whatever methods we choose to do, they've always got to be submissive to His mission, right? And that's a lot of fun. So in the School of Missions, we'll look at some things like, in terms of mission care, what does the Bible say about missions and how to carry them out? And we'll look at Paul, and we'll look at Jesus. And I love how Paul puts it in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1. Imitate me as I imitate Christ. So what's Paul doing? He's being like Jesus as he carries out his mission. And part of being like Jesus and carrying out that mission, we see Paul's very intentional and focused on how to find lost people, where they're at, how to share the gospel with them according to who they are and their different culture and their different challenges. And so Paul is being like Jesus, godly and full of life with a gospel message to share. And he's being like Jesus by being very strategic in where he goes and how he does that. You'll see that Paul didn't just preach in every city he came to. He skipped some. Well, Paul, why did you skip this village or this city? Is it because the lost there in that place aren't important? No, when we study a little bit deeper, we see that Paul loved those people too, but he felt like the best way to reach them, being only one missionary, was to reach this city first, that they would reach those that he didn't go to. So he's thinking of the big picture. So mission care, and a whole lot goes in that. But then there's another area that's so important that we've learned over the years is vital, and that's missionary care. Because if you aren't spiritually whole, if you aren't loved and provided and cared for, then you don't last very long. Satan wants to eat you up, chew you up, spit you out, get rid of you because you're doing things that he doesn't like at all. You're threatening his kingdom with the kingdom that you're working for. And so, are you whole spiritually? Are you whole mentally? How are your relationships with your wife that you plan on going to the mission field with? Or if you're single, who are the support people in your life? Who are those people who maybe have done what you hope to do, who can listen and speak wisdom and be there and understand the challenges and issues you're going through? I'm mindful of our brother speaking the other day, talked about his coming back, his transition, culture shock going both ways, and some of those challenges. And I found myself wanting to cry like a baby because I'm like, I know what you're talking about, though it wasn't exactly the same experiences. The experiences of a missionary, wherever you go, have some similarities. And so who are those missionary people in your life? Missionary care. So maybe that's the perspective of the School of Missions and the missionaries preparing to go to the mission field. They're looking at mission care and missionary care. But what about the perspective of the churches that send them to the mission field? How do they see mission care and missionary care? And the other hat I get to wear from time to time is that of mission coordinator. And on the mission committee here at Sunset, I serve with Charles Spear, Patrick Schaefer, Kevin Haynes, Tom Kunis, Steve Crockett, Todd Davis. Am I missing anybody there, guys? That's everybody. Those guys, this team, is very concerned about mission care and missionary care. When we think about mission care, we as the Sunset Church, Sunset Mission Committee, begin to think back. And Sunset Church of Christ started around 1955, and almost since that day of its conception, it has been a missional church. And not long after it started to send foreign missionaries. And so there's several years there of working in several different places around the world and learning a lot of things, and some of those the hard way, though some of those through the victories that God handed to us on a silver platter, and we're like, wow, I'm glad that worked. So God has taught us a lot of things, and we ask ourselves, what can we learn from that? But how can we also be mindful and open and biblical in our decision-making as we look at the circumstances of the present? Where are the open doors that we as Sunset Church need to walk through? Now, when we're training missionaries, one of the things we'll mention to you is, who are you? What are the blessings God's given you, and how are you called to feed into the kingdom out of those? Like giftedness, like your personality, like you and your wife's relationship. How do you do ministry out of your marriage? How do you do ministry and missionary work out of your singleness? What does the Bible say about that? And so we realize that giftedness plays a part in how and where perhaps we're going to do mission work. But I think that's also true for churches. Churches have these blessings from God that make them unique and special, just like each one of us has blessings from God that make us unique and special in the way He uses us to carry out His mission. So we at the Sunset Church ask ourselves, who are we? And what has God especially blessed us with, and how does that feed into the mission work we do? How are we good stewards of those blessings? Blessings like, we got this program, we're very courageous and bold young people who hold on to their faith and persevere through challenging times, have an amazing impact for the gospel as they work among the lost in different places. It's called the AIM program. We have this program where people come from all parts of the United States and sometimes from other parts of the world, and they come with a heart for the Lord, and they dedicate themselves for 2 years, sometimes 3, into learning everything God has to say because they want to serve Him in the most pure sense possible. And out of them come missionaries. It's called the 2-year program here at Sunset. We have a deaf program. We also have these partnerships that aren't a part of SIBI per se, but our alumni have started them. And they're programs that reach the lost in very special but powerful ways. And I'm going to give you one example, and that's the World Bible School program. Y'all are familiar with that, right? And so Sunset looks and it goes, what are all these blessings God's given us? And one of them is this Sunset congregation who traditionally, year after year, sacrifices greatly to give to the missions endeavors that we as a congregation pursue. And we have, ever since I've been here, reached our goal and exceeded it every single year. This body loves to give to missions, and they love missionaries. So we bring all that together. World Bible School, AIM, SIBI. How do we bring all that together, be good stewards of it, and focus it in a concentrated way in a place, plant a church that's mature and strong enough to develop its own members and send them out then to evangelize their countries and their nations? We feel like that's our calling. That's not the way every church does mission work, understand? It looks different everywhere you go. But we're trying to ask, how has God gifted us and charged us to be good stewards and to carry out mission work? That's mission care. What about the missionary care as far as Sunset Church is concerned? We want to make sure our missionaries have everything they need to do what we have asked them to do. We mean that in every sense of the word. Physically, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. We want to provide them with financial support, but we want to help them raise and find other supporters so that they have all that they need. And those financial supporters from other places become our partners in this work. But we also want to listen to what are their needs on the field and be ready to respond quickly to those. We maintain constant contact with them. I'm on Skype with our missionaries regularly, and the mission committee is very in touch with what's going on right now in the mission field. Not in a heavy-handed way. We don't want that, but in a concerned, we love you, we got your back, and we're here with everything God's blessed us with to help you do what we've called you to do. And there's our missionary care aspect. Who are the missionaries that we get to support? And that's what I want to share with you a little bit now. First of these, would you guys advance that for me? I may be messing up something here. There we go. David and Olivia Nelson. They're working in Tauranga, New Zealand, at the Otamoti congregation. Now, Olivia Nelson was an ex-Aimer. She grew up here at the Sunset Church of Christ. Her father is an elder here at Sunset. And she did her AIM time in New Zealand. And there she met a young man named David, who you see pictured here. He's a missionary kid. He's the son of a long-term missionary couple there at the Otamoti congregation who have served many times as our AIM coordinators there. Well, David's father now is the director of the South Pacific Bible College. And so David Nelson is working there, some with the South Pacific Bible College, some with the Otamoti congregation to do outreach and evangelism. And as they do that, David is also seeking, as his credibility grows in that area, to unite other leaders in New Zealand churches and just talk and look for ways to be more evangelistic throughout New Zealand. Our next couple of couples, or triple of couples, are a team that is working in Auckland, New Zealand. This is the Cherry, the Ely, and the Peters families. They went to Auckland, New Zealand about 8.5 years ago and started a new church plant. When they did that, they were the first American missionaries to go to New Zealand in 40 years. That congregation is very unique in that it is a congregation made up primarily of young couples. And that's unique in New Zealand because majorly the churches there are made up of an older generation. And so these guys are reaching this younger generation, and that is very encouraging to the entire country. Of course, very encouraging to us. Their main focus right now at this point in their work is to develop the leaders that they have and to mature, dedicated, responsible leadership that will carry that church on into the future. Next missionary family, the Habashi family, and they're serving in Cairo, Egypt. Now, this is a country where Islam is the dominant religion, and it's where evangelism is illegal, and it's where Christians are persecuted. But in spite of this, Alfred has baptized 18 people into Christ over the last 4 years. He passes out Bibles, New Testaments. He can't do that on the street, it's illegal. So what he does is he finds ways to invite people into the church building, and there he can give them a New Testament, he can study the Bible with them, and people will come in off the streets and they'll take a Bible from him at risk. You don't lightly take a Bible in Egypt. They'll take it at risk and they'll hide it and they'll leave, and sometimes they'll come back and they'll ask for another one. And in that process, he's met many people and studied with them, and some of those have come to Christ. But Alfred also represents an opportunity and is looking at opportunities God is opening perhaps for him in the Muslim world, in Europe, and here's how that plays itself out. Alfred can speak Arabic. Of course, he's Egyptian. And Alfred can travel to places we can't go. He can go to places where refugees who have been leaving Islamic-driven countries are staying in exile, and he can take the gospel message to these open doors. And many of these refugees are ready to leave behind traditional ways, and they're looking for a gospel message from a God who truly wants for them peaceful lives, full of love. And so Alfred represents someone for whom many opportunities are opening up, and Sunset is trying to be very prayerful about how we can support him in those. Next city we're working in is Mexico City, and there are 5 families there working together on a team, and they're working in several areas. And maybe this represents where, at this point, that plan of consolidating the different blessings that God has given us is coming to fruition little by little, maybe most evidently at this point. Lalo leads the team there in Mexico City. This team's trying to incorporate a faithful Mexican leadership which exists there, along with AIM, along with a full-time Bible and ministry training school. Various SIBI instructors and Sunset members and ministers will travel down at different times during the year and bring a special seminar or marriage enrichment classes or whatever might be needed by the body there. And that partnership exists far beyond just a financial partnership. The school that I just mentioned currently has 2 families studying full-time, Osvaldo and his family and Marco and his family. And these guys are studying like you are. At the same time, Lalo is giving them tons of assignments, ministry assignments, that they carry out among the body there, but also evangelistic assignments within the neighborhood surrounding the church. Osvaldo has started a small group in his neighborhood, and it has on average 15 to 20 folks who are primarily all non-believers. He's a bit of an evangelist and just sharing what has been shared with him. The next family I want to share with you that we support and are sponsors of are the Molina family. Israel Molina serves primarily in the area of an evangelist. That's the area of his giftedness, and he does that through forming relationships and showing mercy to people in need. But Israel has a curriculum. He has a very clear disciple-making plan, and that has some flexibility in it, but he knows where he's going. And so he'll begin to study and work with a contact, baptize them into Christ, and then begin to incorporate them through a small group into the greater body of Christ. When they get incorporated into the greater body of Christ, he helps them find their area of service. At the same time, he takes them with him as he begins to follow up on the familial and friend contacts that are connected to them. He does that primarily, most of the work for a while, but then some of them start to do that. So that's his plan and his goal that he's following. Princeton and Danny Palmer went down to Mexico City and joined this team March of last year, and their purpose for going in the long term is to be full-time AIM coordinators. We want to see AIM year after year involved in that work, one team after another, and we'd like to see this couple dedicated to leading that. Right now, Princeton is preparing for that role. He's working along with Lalo. Lalo's the current AIM coordinator there in Mexico City, with looking forward to Princeton taking that in the future. But what Princeton is doing currently, in addition to working with AIM, is developing some ministries that he hopes to incorporate AIMers into in the future. One of those ministries is an evangelistic ministry through teaching English there at the building, and he has several students who come every Saturday. He's baptized 3 of those now, and he's in Bible studies with one-on-one Bible studies with 3 others. So he's beginning to develop that and grow that. Very talented young man, very gifted teacher. He's also working with 2 AIMers, Bonnie and Travis. And Bonnie and Travis have their special niche in the work. Bonnie especially comes to my mind as I think about our deaf program here. She learned sign language here at SIBI, and she learned Mexican Sign Language down there when she entered the work in Mexico City, and she serves to translate between the hearing and the deaf in that congregation. She serves to interpret for Mike, who's our full-time deaf minister there, with the other team. She serves in many ways. I want to talk about Jesus and Abby Sosa. Jesus and Abby just got to the field about 6 months ago, maybe less. And they have been making plans and putting things into place to reach out to UNAM. It's the largest university in all of Latin America, about 320,000, 380,000 students, somewhere in there. It's huge, bigger than Lubbock. This college campus is bigger than all of Lubbock. And Jesus and Abby have done some research and talked to a lot of people, and they're getting materials ready, and they are going to open up a coffee shop with some events that are going to go out of that coffee shop on a regular basis that have a Christian, family, evangelistic focus. That will begin on October 2nd, this coming weekend. So let's be prayerful about these guys. They've put a lot into that. That's when they're going to launch it. We see Sunset Church being involved and AIMers being involved in that coffee shop outreach, if you want to call it that. There's a lot of events that they're planning that could see the AIMers being involved in when they get there, but also the larger group that goes down every year. That's coming and forthcoming, and we'll be talking about that more as it develops. Mike and Kim Cantrell. Mike and Kim went down with me on a campaign 2 years ago. I think it is now, not very long ago. They just want to go on their foreign mission trip. And they're a deaf couple, went through the deaf program here and graduated with high honors. We love these guys. They went down on that mission trip, and while they were there, the word got out that a deaf couple is there. And so about 15 to 20 deaf came to meet them. And Mike and Kim quickly broke off from our regularly scheduled activities, and along with Dennis Wilson, began to kind of teach and share the gospel message with this group. Mike came back and said, I think we need to go down there full time. And so Sunset said, I think we do too, along with you. And so we sponsor them, along with the Cameron Church of Christ, and they're working with a deaf church there in the same church building where the hearing church meets. What's kind of happening is that hearing people have family and friends who are deaf, and deaf people have family and friend connections who are hearing. And we've seen a little bit of spillover now where maybe a deaf member comes to the deaf church, and after they get incorporated, they invite their hearing parents or family. And they're kind of interested to go and see, where is this place that actually cares for our deaf child and treats them with respect and love. That's kind of odd in this big city. Let's go check that out. And that goes both ways. Mike and Kim have a church there. Lord's blessed him with about 15 to 20 regular people at this point. And he's had 3 or 4 baptisms. I'd have to look back and check. This young man pictured above is CJ. And CJ was a professional wrestler in Mexico City. He had the masks. He has he looks kind of thin there, but this guy's cut. He's like a rock. All the acrobatics, everything goes along with it. But CJ decided that's idolatry. It habitates the same space in my life as idolatry. So he tore down his posters. He burned them and his masks. It looks like it's in his apartment. I'm not sure where he did that when I saw the picture. But he obeyed the gospel, and CJ has been attending the deaf school that Mike started, and CJ is teaching and preaching now there in the deaf congregation. A very talented and gifted young man, and he brought his hearing parents, who have now been coming with some regularity to the hearing worship on Sundays. In addition to these guys, our full-time missionaries, we also, as a congregation, seek to support our young people who desire to go to the AIM field, to go through the AIM program. 2 AIMers who we're supporting right now are Abby Wilson and Nathan Clark. Every year when I make the Sunset Mission presentation, I like to share one story. That's usually all I have time for from the mission fields. And this year, I had to share this story from our AIMer, Abby Wilson, who's serving in Honduras. And I'm going to share it with you here this morning. It's a post that she put on her Facebook. Now, where she's serving in Honduras, we need to understand there are many deaf people, and they're treated horribly. They're marginalized oftentimes. And into this world, by the providence of God, steps Abby Wilson. Abby's grandparents are deaf. Abby has grown up around deaf all her life, and she is a fluent signer. Her dad would say she's the best signer in the world. He's not prejudiced, he's just telling the truth. Abby and others have started a significant work among the deaf there in Honduras. Abby has studied with some of the deaf and has a regular Bible study with the deaf now. And last Thursday, well, it had been Thursday a few weeks ago now, this is what she posted on her Facebook. She says, "This past hour has been one of the most amazing and hardest hours. Today, the deaf came over to my house, and we got into talking. I showed them pictures of my grandma and my grandpa, the deaf ones, and I explained to them who they were. I explained that they raised 5 hearing kids, and they studied and worked very hard. One of them asked me, 'So they can read?' Another asked, 'They can write too?' When I answered yes to both, their mouths dropped. After about 10 seconds of them being in amazement, one of the women looked at me and signed, 'Do you love them, even though they are deaf?' That was such an easy question for me to answer, but her asking it hurt me so much because I knew why she asked it. I answered with, 'Yes, they taught me. They took care of me and loved me. I love them even more because they are deaf, and my family loves them.' And they all began to clap and scream. They were so happy. Then they told me about how most of their family hate them. They don't even want anything to do with them. How they weren't allowed outside because their family didn't want other people to know. How the schools they went to would shove them in a corner and forget about them. How they went to school, but they don't know how to read or write. No one took the time to know them or to teach them. After they left, I was overwhelmed with anger. Why isn't God doing something here? Where are all the people who could teach them language and teach them that God is love? Where are they? Why isn't He doing something about it? And then pretty quickly God showed me His answer. You see, I said to God, why don't you do something? And God said, I did, Abigail. I created you. God has sent people here, she writes. He sent me here. I believe that God will help them through me and through the rest of the team as well. He will teach them through us. God is faithful. Well, I think I'm one of the most blessed men here because that's the kind of folks I get to work with on a regular basis. God bless you.